Most personal finance content tells you the same things: how to create a budget, how to cut down on expenses, and how to follow some version of the 50-30-20 rule. You'll also find endless tips about saving, investing, or where to put your money, so that over the course of 15 or 20 years, you might build wealth. But here's the truth: this information has always been available. Anyone, no matter their salary or background, can access this knowledge for free. It's all out there on the internet, books, or in courses. So the real question is, why do so many people still struggle with money, even though the information is not a secret anymore? Why do some people remain stuck, while others are able to create extraordinary financial freedom for themselves? The answer isn't just about knowing financial concepts. It's about the mindset and the mental frameworks people build around money and decision making. Because while concepts can be learned by anyone in a matter of days, building the right mindset is much harder. And that's the real difference between people who remain comfortable but stuck and people who manage to create massive opportunities for themselves. I've had the privilege of working closely with billionaires. I've seen two people personally go from being far from wealthy to becoming billionaires right before my eyes. I know how they think, how they make decisions, how they interact with money, how they guide their children, and how they deal with the people around them. And what I realized is this: their mental models are completely different from the average person's. When you compare $1 million to $1 billion, the difference is enormous. 1 million is life-changing for most people, but $1 billion is a completely different universe. And that difference isn't achieved through small tweaks or better saving habits. It comes from thinking in a fundamentally different way. Wealthy people view life through a set of lenses that most of us never learn to adopt. And once you start seeing the world through those lenses, your decisions, your actions, and ultimately your results begin to shift in dramatic ways. One of the most powerful differences is how wealthy people approach decision making. Think of a chess player. When they make a move, they're not just thinking about that single move. They're calculating how it will affect the game 5, 10, or even 15 moves later. Wealthy people think in the same way. The average person might say, I want to buy this. I want to take that loan. I want to stay in this job because it feels right in the moment. But the wealthy ask, if I do this today, what will it mean in 5 years? How will this limit or expand my future choices? What second, third, or fourth order effects will this create? That long-term perspective makes all the difference. A simple decision that looks harmless today can trap someone for decades, while another decision, maybe a little harder at first, can open doors to freedom and opportunity later. The wealthy are constantly playing a long game, not just reacting to the present. Another key difference is how they look at risk and reward. Most of us have been taught the standard rule: higher returns mean higher risks. And yes, to some extent, that's true. But wealthy people know that not all risks are created equal. They look for asymmetric opportunities, places where the downside is limited, but the upside is massive. Take a traditional job, for example. You show up, you work hard, you move up slowly, and maybe you get a raise or a bonus. That's fine. But the rewards are directly proportional to the risks you take. If you move into a new role, change departments, or relocate, you might get a bump in pay, but the structure is fairly linear. Now imagine instead that you use your evenings or weekends to build a side project, start a small business, or create something of your own. The risk feels bigger because it's unfamiliar, but if it works, the upside is far beyond what you could ever make in a corporate salary. Wealthy people understand this and constantly look for those asymmetric plays. They know that one well-timed and well-executed opportunity can change everything. And here's the important part: many of them don't come from wealthy families. They didn't inherit millions. They come from modest backgrounds. What they did inherit, though, was resilience. They told themselves, I have a roof over my head, food to eat, and I've been given enough education or skills to survive. I won't end up on the street. So since survival is not the question, why not play to win? Why not aim higher? This mindset allows them to take risks the average person avoids. They know that their worst case scenario is still manageable, so they focus on the best case outcomes instead. This connects to another powerful idea: anti-fragility. Fragile things break under stress. Strong things withstand stress. But anti-fragile things actually get stronger because of stress. Wealthy and resilient people are anti-fragile. When they face obstacles, failures, or setbacks, they don't collapse under the weight. They don't just survive, they grow stronger. Instead of asking, why is life so hard? Why do bad things happen to me? They ask, what is this teaching me? What strength am I building here? What lesson would I never have learned if life had been easier? This mindset is transformative. I can say from personal experience that the toughest years of my life were also the years I grew the most. Times when my business struggled, when nothing seemed to be working, when every day felt like a battle. Those were the years I developed resilience, problem-solving skills, and emotional strength that I still rely on today. And I'm certain that without those struggles, I wouldn't have the perspective I do now. It wasn't about financial gains in that period. It was about mental toughness. Wealthy people embrace this. They see obstacles as training. Every challenge makes them better, sharper, more prepared for what comes next. relaxed. Another thing that separates the wealthy from everyone else is their understanding of compounding. Most people hear about compounding in the context of money, but the real magic of compounding is in learning, skills, and habits. Here's the catch though. Compounding is boring. Doing the same thing again and again, long after it stops feeling exciting, is what creates exponential results. Think about how most people behave. They get excited when they start something new. A new skill, a new job, a new project. It's all exciting at first, but eventually the excitement fades. Things get repetitive, and that's when most people quit and move on to something else, chasing the next shiny thing. Wealthy people don't. They keep going long after the novelty is gone. They understand that the real results come from the boring part, from the repetition, from the relentless consistency. That's why you'll see wealthy people mastering one field, one craft, or one idea. They don't hop around endlessly. They know that compounding happens quietly in the background. Whether it's creating content, building a company, improving a skill, or maintaining their health, they embrace the boring repetitions because they know that over years, it turns into extraordinary growth. This applies to fitness, learning, relationships, and money. Consistency, not excitement, is what compounds. Finally, there's the emotional relationship with money. Most of us like to think we're rational with money, but in reality, money is deeply emotional. We buy things not because we need them, but because we desire them. We buy to impress others, to feel better, or to signal success. And often these emotional decisions drain us financially and keep us trapped. Wealthy people are very aware of this. They can tell the difference between emotional spending and intentional spending. They know which decisions are driven by ego and which are driven by purpose. And beyond that, they don't get swayed by every rise and fall. Whether it's in markets, business, or life, they zoom out. They focus on the long-term trajectory instead of reacting emotionally to short-term ups and downs. Think of it like college. Some days are amazing, some days are frustrating, and some days feel pointless. But you don't drop out every time you have a bad day. Over the course of 4 years, you transform into a completely different person. Wealthy people treat money and life decisions the same way. They don't panic on the bad days or celebrate too wildly on the good ones. They stay focused on the bigger picture. And that's the real secret. This isn't just about personal finance tips. It's about reshaping your mindset. If you spend even half an hour reflecting on these ideas, you'll do something incredibly valuable for yourself. You'll begin to shift the way you see money, risk, challenges, consistency, and emotions. And that shift can be the foundation not only of wealth, but of happiness, freedom, and control over your life. Because in the end, wealth isn't just about having more money. It's about having more choices. It's about being able to live life on your terms, free from unnecessary stress and limitations. And that begins not with financial tricks, but with the mental frameworks you build today.